Hi guys, this is Cheyenne. Greetings from Shanghai. In my videos, I interview expats who work and live in Shanghai to share their personal and professional life stories here. In this video, I'm going to talk to Kriss Taylor, who is the Technology Strategy Senior Manager here at JLR Land Rover. The highlights are he's going to talk about how to manage a Chinese team under the unspoken cultural rule, which is a high context culture, and he's also going to share how being a foreigner / the outsider of the Chinese social scheme has enabled him to play across different Chinese social dimensions, which I think is a privilege because being Chinese, I cannot do that. And he's going to talk about how Chinese culture has changed the way he treats his parents. And he's also going to share how living and working in Shanghai and meeting people from different backgrounds have encouraged him to be an entrepreneur himself. I hope you enjoy this video and get some useful information out of it. Thank you.
My name is Kriss Taylor. I've been working in Shanghai now for the past 4 years. I currently work for JLR Land Rover within their strategy department. I have a team that looks at developing the specific technology strategy for the China market for all of our products that we sell here.
Wait, how long have you been here?
So firstly in Wuhan for 2 years, then went back to the UK for 2.5 years, and then in Shanghai for just gone 4 years.
So what was your idea about China before you came here?
I guess I didn't have a hugely nuanced understanding of China. It's definitely a country that you grow up kind of knowing about through, I guess, through film, through books. You know, it's got those things like, kung fu, like tea drinking. My understanding of kind of recent Chinese history with Mao Zedong and the Cultural Revolution was really poor. And I had a very quick immersion actually when I taught in university in Wuhan. A lot of the students were asking me about this, my thoughts on it, and I actually kind of had to go home that evening and read about it.
So what was your idea about Chinese people, from your observations in the UK?
In my sixth form college, in my maths class, there was one boy from Shanghai who was super quiet and super good at maths. So kind of filled that stereotype a little bit. And then actually, I did live with two boys in my first year of university. Again, two boys from Shanghai. They were cool, but again, they kept themselves to themselves. They were quite quiet.
So what brought you here then, the first time?
So I did an engineering degree as through university, but unfortunately I graduated in the recession, in the global recession. So all the engineering graduate schemes were cancelled that year in the UK. So there was very limited opportunity in the UK. A company came to our university to talk about education, teaching abroad opportunities. So working abroad and travelling was definitely something I was interested in. We started looking at China. And there was a lot more opportunities in China. Obviously, it's a much bigger country. So
when you first got here, did you experience a cultural shock? Can you please describe something that surprised you the most?
Definitely. The cities here are huge. The sheer scale and amount of people and the busyness of these cities was a shock. You came here knowing that this is a large country with a huge population. When you experienced it, it was definitely far greater than what we had imagined. Language is the second shock, but my Chinese ability was zero when I moved here, really. So I think the biggest culture shock I had was in the canteen at the university I was working at. And the third day, I didn't have a class before my lunch break, so I was by myself before the lunch break. So I made my way over to the canteen, couldn't find anyone I recognised, and it was just a huge hall of small little restaurants, well, kind of windows selling food, and then communal seating, and boards of Chinese writing. And no one could speak a word of English, no English translations, not even pictures. So it was like oh wow, I can't even order myself some food. So I literally went home and just started learning a few vegetable names and learning the characters and a few meat names, just so I could read a few dishes. And I think for about 2 weeks I ate tudou niuro, which is literally beef and potato. But it was enough to allow me to feed myself.
What brought you back the second time?
So I went back to the UK and got a job with JLR Land Rover, worked there for 2.5 years. Loved the job, loved the company, but didn't really settle back into UK lifestyle. Where we're headquartered is kind of out in the countryside. I definitely really enjoyed living in a large city. Just the sheer amount of things to do and the kind of the hustle and the bustle really was attractive to me. And then one day, the head of the R&D department, which is where was my home department, said that he wanted to have someone based in Shanghai. So upon hearing that, I was like, oh wow, it was something I was keen to pursue. So I spent about 6 months working with my management team, because all of them had no experience of the market, to kind of plan out what we could do as a department, what were the opportunities in China. Eventually, a role was created and it was confirmed. HR sent out the application. I applied. Unfortunately, the day before I broke up for Christmas, I got told by my senior manager that I'd been given the opportunity. And so I moved out here, relocated with the regular Land Rover, and took up a role here to support the R&D department.
Can you tell us about what is it like to work with Chinese people?
I do manage a team now. One challenge is, but there's definitely means to work around it, is the respect for hierarchy. There is the requirement here that you need to kind of listen, you need to respect your hierarchy, and there's not much challenge given to your superiors. So if a new project or task needs to be done, the kind of communication does need to come from your senior or their senior. So sometimes when I'm working cross-functional, so I'm from my department to another department, and I'll be kind of collaborating with my peers. If there's a requirement to do something new outside of their current tasks, it can be a little bit difficult to get that moving unless their boss has bought into it and has communicated to them that they should support. But I think once you realize that, you know then to engage. So I think you have to, first you need to build your kind of partnerships with your peers if you want to work cross-functionally, and you need to build a friendship there. I think that's important if you're going to have a close working relationship. But then you also need to make sure that you're engaging both your seniors and their seniors into whatever you're going to work on, and getting that then communicated down if you really want to gain traction. I find there's a lot of ideas from colleagues, but you definitely need to. I think in UK we're pushed to be more, as individuals we'll kind of battle it out in terms of sharing our ideas. I think in China I found it works better, and from my experience of managing a team, is if you allow teams to compete. I think Chinese people are very competitive, but not necessarily as individuals against individuals. If you have like 2 or 3 people working together versus 2 or 3 people versus together, then you'll see huge amount of competition flourish. Kids in school in China grow up in a very competitive environment, having to outcompete their peers constantly. But I definitely find the teams, the colleagues are more comfortable to work when they're working in a group. And so I think you just have to change that dynamic sometimes. Whereas maybe with my UK colleagues, that's not necessarily as necessary. They're happy to work as individuals more so. But other than that, I think there's always means to mediate the differences. But no, I find it really interesting, because you just, working together is great, but you also just learn so much more about life and their experiences. And it's really interesting to talk to, China's moved so quickly over the last few decades, and I've got colleagues from, 60, 50 years of age all the way down to in their 20s, and to work alongside them and to talk to them and to hear their stories of how they've grown up, and hear the inter-generational rivalries in China is really fascinating. Like you've always got the post-80s and the post-90s in the office. That's always a big rivalry that I enjoy mixing up sometimes and hearing the two sides from them. So no, it's a great experience.
What do you like and dislike about living here?
So I've chose to come here, to work here, and I'm under no obligation to stay. So if there was a huge dislike or even any dislikes, I'd probably have moved back by now. There's obviously real differences. I'm very used to those differences now to the UK, but I personally quite enjoy that. And it's not necessarily a China or UK thing. I think whenever I travel and go to different countries, I quite enjoy exploring the differences. And I think it's just a case of kind of stepping back and just accepting that things are different in wherever you go. Different people, different cultures, different landscapes, infrastructure. In terms of what I enjoy, I think it's really opened my eyes to learning about China as a country. But I think the biggest thing for me, is I always tell people, is because it's such a different country and culture, it gives you the ability to separate yourself from where you grew up. So I didn't travel. I went on holiday as a child, but I always lived and grew up in the UK until my university years. So obviously that frames the way you think about everything, and it's not a bad thing, but it's just you have to realize that your country has framed the way you see and perceive the world. I think moving to China and having been here for so long now, it gives you the ability to kind of step back and start to realize some of the things that the UK has influenced your thinking on, and because you can see other people, and not in Shanghai especially, you're not just meeting with Chinese people, you're meeting with people from all over the world. So you're getting to hear and see perspectives that are alien to you as such. And it's really nice to kind of learn that and then question then why do I think this about the world, or why do I perceive the things in this way. So for me that's been one of the biggest opportunities and things I've enjoyed. And then on a kind of more superficial basis, I think it's a great part of the world to be based out of. So like I said, growing up I travelled Europe a lot, parts of Africa, parts of North America, but I never went to Asia. So being based in Shanghai and Wuhan, it allowed me to explore a part of the world. You know, when my parents are like, you know, flying to Spain for a 2-hour flight, I'm like, oh, I'm off to Japan for 2 hours, and they're like, oh, that's fancy. I'm like, well, it's not just a 2-hour flight. You know, it's exactly the same as you going to France or Spain. So it's a beautiful part of the world to base yourself from and actually see this other side of the world that I didn't have the chance to when I was younger.
Okay, so overall it sounds like a very inspiring experience to you. How do you think that experience have inspired you to do more about your life?
It's definitely matured me, I think, a lot quicker than I guess I would have if I'd have stayed in the UK and worked there. Definitely broadens your horizons. I think another thing of living here, because I'm not Chinese, so I don't kind of fit into the kind of societal structures, which is if I was in the UK, I would. Every country has them. I would definitely fit into a structure. I guess in living here, I don't do so as well. I don't fit in. So you kind of sit on the outside a little bit, and so because of that, I guess you kind of get to play across different social domains, and with that, it kind of gives you the chance to see a lot of things maybe you wouldn't see if you would live in the UK and living in your domain. So for me, it's really, I get spurned on like an entrepreneurial spirit that I guess I didn't have when I was growing up. I definitely loved engineering and technology, and I'm still kind of very passionate about that side. But I was never really passionate about being an entrepreneur or kind of wanting to start my own business of any description. I think living and working here, you meet so many people. It's a very fast-paced city. A lot of people are coming here to do that, to start their own businesses and run their own ideas here. And I think seeing that and meeting these people has really kind of spurned on me this interest and appetite to do so.
So what's your entrepreneurial idea? Do you have one now?
So through my job, a lot of the work I do is helping my UK colleagues to understand the opportunities in China with our product portfolio. So what can we do in the technology domain specifically? So you know, the automotive industry is going through a huge disruption. You've got your automated vehicles, you've got connectivity, electrification, and numerous other technologies being developed. And all of these spaces are being heavily pushed in China, both by the consumers and by the government. So you're seeing a real, increasing development pace here, and also kind of a divergence in the way China's doing these things. So a lot of my work is kind of understanding this and laying out the strategy for China from our company perspective. But then it's about how to convince my UK colleagues about this, why we should do it this way. Because there's still, China's definitely increased its presence in the news cycle. You know, every day now there'll be some story about China in the British media, but it's still very much political focused. It very rarely talks about the kind of daily lives of people here and giving people the means of understanding why things are happening here different. So a lot of my work is to try and communicate this to my colleagues so they can understand why things are happening here in a different way, or happening here faster than they are in the UK. And there's a little reluctance sometimes to listen and to understand it properly. So on the side of this now, I'm really interested to explore this space, and I've got a few other friends living in different countries and about this kind of how emerging economies have got this real opportunity now to drive innovation globally, based on their kind of recent history, political structures, society. All these elements are just different, very different, and more open than maybe in more developed economies. So I'm really interested in exploring this space in helping kind of ideas transfer from emerging to developed economies, and vice versa, from developed back into emerging economies. I think that transfer of ideas and knowledge today is still quite limited. There's a lot of trade in terms of physical products. In terms of idea of knowledge and ideas, that transfer is still really limited because there's still not a very good understanding between the two sides.
What part of Chinese culture have had an influence on you, and how?
And I had a really interesting conversation with my parents the other day, and I was asking about private health insurance. You know, I think it'd be a good idea. Now the UK has a national health service, so I was asking them to inquire about getting private health insurance and you know the cost of it. And it is expensive, but I was really kind of asking them to find out what it would be, and then if needs be, I'd help support them with it. And my parents were like, why would you do that? And I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, why would you help us? I'm like, because you're my parents. And I feel there's this, and I was taken aback of it. And I was like, because you're my parents, like, of course I'm going to help you. And I think it's definitely something in China, there's an expectation that children will help their parents as they go older. And just from even when their parents are younger, your child is kind of required to support their parents. More so, I guess, than we would in the UK. I guess our family structures have become more independent. So I think in China, typically families, although it's shifting a little bit, still tend to stay together and live together for a much longer time. And I guess I've clearly absorbed this kind of mentality. And it was really interesting kind of having my parents come back to me saying, well, why? I'm like, of course I'm going to do this. Like, you're my parents.
What would you have done differently if you knew everything you know about China now?
Oh, good question. I think knowing what I now know now, I would have hit the ground running quicker in Shanghai in terms of, I think obviously when you first move somewhere, your priority is about building up a social network of friends and people that you can, explore and enjoy life with in this new city. I guess I was very focused on my role. I think in terms of my interests, I would have definitely liked to have pushed myself to get out of my comfort zone more. And when I first arrived in Shanghai and start exploring some of the opportunities that are available here much quicker than I guess I have done. I don't know if I could have done it quicker, but I guess building that social network takes time. Maybe I could do it quicker now, knowing what I know, but I don't know. It does take time. It's kind of one of those exponential things. Once you meet a few people, they introduce you to more people, and you meet more people, and it exponentially grows quite quickly. But it's that initial starting point that takes some time. But I think I would have maybe put less effort into that, and really focused on not just trying to meet people for the sake of meeting people, but try to focus on the kind of things I want to do and what I'm interested in, and then just meeting people through that. Because I think that's what I do now is, I'll just pursue the hobbies and interests that I have. I'll go to events that provide that, and then you meet people there that, have the same interests as you, and that's a really nice way to kind of flourish and start a friendship or kind of network. So I think that's probably what I'd do different knowing what I know now. Just be kind of truer to myself in what I know I care about.
Well, can you use 5 words to describe your life in Shanghai?
Never dull, super convenient, really eclectic. And I think just on a daily basis, it's just really inspiring. Yeah, I think that's kind of the main thing that's keeping me here right now, is just the kind of level of inspiration that you can get here. It's just constantly driving ideas and things that you can pursue.
What do you think of Chinese girls and dating them?